Patchwork Heart Ministry and Fiat Ministry Network present the Discover Your Mission series.
I can't even share with you how I was so rooted in my faith. And I was attending Mass, but I was not present. I was a good man, I was a good father, I was instilling the sacraments into my family. I was definitely not intentional. I was stuck rooted in my faith.
I did not want to become Catholic. I came into the church kicking and screaming. I even left for a period because I was like, I can't. All my plans that I had are gone now. So I tried to go back, only to come back later on because of the Eucharist.
But what kind of strength did he have? Jackie did not just have a strength of body or baseball skill. He had a strength inside of his spirit, a courageous meekness that empowered him to play the game.
My husband comes home from work and I tell him what is going on with me and he's like, oh, okay. And I'm like, no, I think this is like some sort of miracle, dude. And he's like, oh, of course, but I'll believe it when I see it. Honey, you've been trying to quit. You've been saying this and saying that. And his big line to me is, you shouldn't say things because I never follow through on them. And so this was week after week, month after month. He is looking at me like, this is a miracle. There is no way that you, on your own, could have done this.
In 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verses 16 through 21, St. Paul compares the sacrifice of the Christians to the sacrifice of Israel and then to the sacrifice of the pagans. Paul calls the chalice the blood of Christ, and the bread as participation in the body of Christ, and then warns his listeners that you cannot partake of the table of the Lord and the table of demons at the same time. So in other words, you need to decide, what are you going to participate in? Are you going to participate in the historic Christian idea of the altar of sacrifice, which is in the Eucharist, or not?
Welcome to the Sowing Hope podcast. This is a show all about implanting hope in our hearts. I'm Bill Snyder, joined by my friend Ann DeSantis. We're glad you're here for our uplifting conversation about faith and how it sustains our hearts through all the seasons of life. Thanks for walking with us. And good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Sowing Hope podcast. I am Bill Snyder. And as always, I am joined by my friend Andy Santis. And so thank you so much for joining us this evening, or this morning, I should say. It's been a long morning already. Welcome into the program, and thank you so much for being here, everybody. And as I welcome in my co-host, Ann, welcome this morning, Ann. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm great. I love summer. I said this so many times here during the summer, but the sun is shining in the window, and I'm just great to be here.
Yeah, it is. It is beautiful. Yeah, I have my window closed, but it's beautiful here this morning. So, welcome in, and thanks again for being here, Ann, as always. And tell us who we have as our guest today, because it's going to be a fun show. Definitely a fun show today.
It is going to be a fun show. We have with us Michael Augsberger from the Greater Philadelphia area, and he is the founder of the International Catholic Film Critics Association, ICFCA. So, Michael, good morning. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me, Ann and Bill. We love our acronyms in the film industry, and ICFCA Catholic film critics. Very, very grateful to be here. Thanks.
Yes, and you're a neighbor too of mine almost, because we're both in the Philadelphia area, and we don't always have guests that are that close to where I am. So it's great to be here with you this morning, and so I'd love for you to talk about anything that you want to share to start out with, Michael. I know that you got involved with this in relatively recent years, I think. So tell us more.
Absolutely. We started it because there really wasn't any Catholic film critics circle. Not that I could find out there. I mean, there were some organizations that deal with the media and with filmmaking from a Catholic standpoint, but there wasn't anything resembling a film critics circle where the writers get together and they award everything based on the best films of the year, and there wasn't something that pooled all the reviews that Catholics write, and whether that's reviews for Catholic publications or just the collection of reviews written by people who consider themselves Catholic and are proud of that, and whose upbringing has influenced their philosophy on how they view film. So I thought that it was a good opportunity to do that and to bring everybody together.
Yeah, that's amazing, Michael. And I will also add, it was wonderful to meet you recently, where we actually got to talk a little bit in person, and you to talk about your mission and everything. So I would like to also invite people who are listening to this podcast to go to CatholicFilmCritics.com. He's got a very nice website which explains exactly what he said. And there's all kinds of film reviews that you can take a look at. So tell us, Michael, if you would, how did you get involved? I mean, you said you noticed that there wasn't much of a presence there of Catholic film critics. So did you come together with someone else when you came up with this idea?
Well, the first person I called was the first person that I knew was a great Catholic reviewer, because I really had to scour the internet to find the writers who are Catholic. John Mulderig is the news editor at Catholic News Service, or one of the culture editors there. He writes the majority of the film reviews. He also has a staff of a couple of other writers. And I asked him, what do you think about this? Because there are a lot of disparate voices out there. There are people who are writing for mainstream publications, but there's no way to know that they're Catholic unless you read their stuff and you pick up on small things. And then there's also the writers who write for the Catholic publications like John, and then those who have started their own organizations that are a little bit smaller in scope than like the overall breadth of the Catholic film critics, but they have their very specific mission. I'm thinking of things like the Pauline Media Center, where a number of religious write film reviews there under the direction of Sister Nancy Osselman, who's been on your show.
Yes,
That's right.
So just pulling all those people together, I thought, can we have one place where people can go and they can compare and contrast all the different voices on film, but that still come from a Catholic perspective? Because there's just so many, there's so much breadth across the spectrum of thought, and there's so many different reasons that a writer might write a review. Mulderig for the Catholic News Service is very focused on the morality of the films, and he's got a great eye for art as well, and he describes it very well. But he's also got a directive from Catholic News Service and from USCCB that, like the Catholic bishops in the U.S., where he needs to evaluate the morality of the film as well, and that's got to be a major focus for him. And that's what his audience wants too. But we also have people like John Anderson, who writes for the Wall Street Journal, right? And so he's not really concerned so much about evaluating it for a Catholic audience particularly, and the morality of the content of the film, even though that, of course, plays into his review. But he's able to focus more on a larger audience. And so to pull all those different voices together and to see what what one writer would think about one film and another writer would think about the same film, not just because they come from different backgrounds. I think that's really fascinating to me, because I've always had a love not just of film, but of also of film reviews and reading them from the best.
Yeah, you shared that with me when we met too, Siskel and Ebert. I know we talked a little bit
Yeah.
about that you were a fan of Ebert, I think. Wasn't it Ebert or was it Siskel?
Ebert was always my favorite.
That's right. That's what I
yeah.
thought.
Yeah, and that's
Okay.
that's how I really got into reading film reviews. I mean, for me, it started when I was young. I had a very small VCR player, and to me, like, that's the experience. I wanted to focus entirely on the film. I had my headphones in. I didn't miss a line of dialogue, and then right afterwards, I would read what he wrote. And so that's what inspired me, and in an indirect way, that it inspired me to start this organization, because he was Catholic. And whether people know that about him or not, you can see it in his reviews and in the way he evaluated, especially films about the clergy or about the church.
Yeah, that's amazing. And there's a lot going on in the Catholic world right now with videos on social media, and people such as Bishop Barron or the organization Formed that have wonderful Catholic content. And that's very catechetical. Movies, not always. I think we can find the beauty of our faith even in secular movies. Sometimes we may have to search a little further, because it's not like watching a Bishop Barron presentation, correct? But there's so much art, beauty, and God speaks through art. And I know maybe we can speak about that, because you have some very good thoughts in terms of how God can speak to all of us through movies.
Yeah, I think it's about interpretation, right? So if you can take a look at all the small signs that you see in a film, and build that up into an argument based on your own interpretation of the film, that the artist has his vision, or her vision. The director certainly has a goal in mind, and you want to keep that in mind. But once the art is out there, right, it's a lot of it is up to the beholder, what it means to them. And if you come in to a secular film, say with a certain frame of mind, then you can see things. I know that there are a lot of people. I'll pick one example, from the literature world as well as the film world. There are a lot of Catholic families out there that may not want their children to see, like, Harry Potter or something like that. But there are also a lot that admire it and say there's a lot of symbolism in this that is indicative of a fatherly presence that in that world isn't described as God, but in our world we can interpret it differently, and it has a lot of lessons for us. And again, to me that's the beauty of something like Catholic Film Critics, is that we have some writers who feel a certain way about a film like that and may warn against it, and we have other writers who feel that they are able to see another purpose in it, and for them to be making their arguments against one another or for one another, that can be fascinating to me.
Yeah, I really like that, Michael. And what you're talking about, because certainly, yeah. I mean, I think we can all find different films out there in the universe that are not maybe congruent with the Catholic teaching, but we can find elements in almost every movie, right, that has like you pointed out, Harry Potter. Yeah, we don't believe in sorcery. We don't believe in magic. We don't believe in those things in the Catholic Church. But there can be elements of those movies, because the reality is that your kid might be invited to a party and there they are watching it in the basement, and that's just what happens. And all right, well, your kid's seen it. So how do we interpret that? How do we look at this? What are some of the positive elements from the movie? Okay, there's a fatherly presence. There's this, there's that. And there's such an important aspect of that, because the reality is that this stuff surrounds us and we cannot escape from it. No matter how much we try to protect our kids or our families or our loved ones from the media and from some of the negative things in the media, you are not going to be able to do it successfully, because we are in the fishbowl of it. I mean, right now we're even on the media. We're even doing this, and okay, we're having a Catholic show and everything, but still, how do we react to it? And I think your mission is so interesting in that regard, because you are reviewing the films from the Catholic perspective, from this perspective of, okay, how do I approach, the viewing of these films? And that is so awesome. That's just a great mission, a great way to approach things. I often think about the intentionality. We go through life very often without intention. And we just kind of watch these movies. We kind of, oh, that was a nice movie, and we move on. We don't think about the virtue and the vice that is present in a film. We don't think about how it's impacting us, because it does impact us. But we often have to think about it. We can say, oh, it was a great movie, like A Star Is Born. That's a great movie. The critics loved it. That was awesome. And then, well, why was it? Why was it great? What made it great to you? I think we have to have that discussion, and so it's wonderful to see that you are having that discussion, and an intentional discussion about how Catholics can view these movies. And there's probably some bad movies out there too, right? I mean, you're not reviewing every movie with 5 stars, right?
That's right. I'm sure.
Some things are there's not as some things are. Yeah, it's very cathartic to rip into a film sometimes. I will say that. Yeah.
Well, at the end of the day, I'm thinking with any film, there's going to be some kind of either good or evil moral lesson that's so affected by the culture. And, we even see that when it comes to whether a movie has some kind of a pro-life overall message or whether they have a pro-death message. And I think you both understand what I mean when I say that, and maybe some of our listeners as well. That's also very important. When a movie's bottom line, what is it teaching? Does it have a message of life, of goodness, of virtue, as you said, Michael? But if it doesn't, that's where we have to kind of open our eyes and say, you know what, maybe this wasn't such a great movie after all. Maybe the acting seemed good. Maybe the effects were great, but you know what? The overall takeaway was evil, right? I mean, so that's where we come in as Catholics and say, did we grow as a human being from this movie, or did it bring out more of a dark side of humanity that didn't make us walk away a better person, if that makes sense?
That's a great point, because I'll take probably the most divisive issue, right? The film that just came out, Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always. I don't know if you heard of it. It's about abortion, and that's, to me, this is probably the greatest calling that we would have in as a member of the film critic circle, is to be able to approach a topic like that and to really critically assess the film with our Catholic perspective. Because I didn't review that film, but we had a number of critics go after it, and what they're able to see in that, what they're able to pull out in terms of the artistry of the film, and the to give praise where it's worthy of it, and how it brings to light some of the issues that people are facing, and why this is such a tough decision, right? Why is it so pervasive in the culture, and then to say this is why it's wrong, right? This is why. This is what's wrong with the situation, and this is the moral problems that the people who are going through the decision and the people who are supporting the person who's going through the decision of whether to abort the child. This is where they fall short. These are the temptations that they've fallen into, and so it's great to get that kind of perspective, to be able to evaluate the film on its merits, and for it to bring up that sort of conversation, a difficult conversation, right? But one that we can have critically thinking about it, to intentionally think about it, and then to give our final judgment. And of course, the critics here have said exactly why they find it, repulsive.
You said it very well. So much to think about there, because we know that film has such a powerful influence on people. And I would say, in my opinion, especially young people, because there's a lot of confusing messages for people who are growing up and trying to figure out, what's right and what's not right, what's outright evil. Mm-hmm. So when there's a place like Catholic Film Critics that they can go to, and even that parents can recommend, it's a place where our Catholic faith means something. So I just commend you for that. And again, it's CatholicFilmCritics.com. And just looking at your website, some of the other areas that you have are news, reviews by critics, reviews by films, awards, top 10, mentorship. Love to hear about that. Yeah. So tell us more about the website and how that all works.
Certainly. I like the way it's organized, because it's organized in the way that I think a film review lover will appreciate. It's very easy to find reviews from the people that you want to read from, right? So we respect the opinions of a certain number of writers that you want to see. Maybe you don't necessarily want to see what everybody thinks about a certain film, but just the ones that you follow. Then you're always able to see, what John Anderson thinks about this film, or what Sister Nancy thinks. It's very simple to see what our Australian contingent thinks. Very well respected writers down under. So we have a very international presence, and it's easy to see that on the website. And I'm proud of the mentorship, honestly, because I've seen, again, this is based heavily on the film critic circles that have been successful out there, that are well known, and a lot of them offer mentorships for young student writers, college writers, people who are up and coming. And if any young Catholic writer would like to meet, to either to network or to be able to learn the craft from any number of our writers who have volunteered to take someone under their wing, and that's one of the ways. And again, that's based on the other critic circles who also offer that potential, and that I've benefited from. In the Philadelphia area, the Philadelphia Critic Circle has helped me. So Stephen Silver is one of the writers there. He was my mentor, and he continues to be able to be open for me to bounce ideas off him and to introduce me to people. And so I'm very grateful for that. And I think to be able to give to a young Catholic writer would be, that's the way to do it. That's a classy way.
Yeah, I one of the things I'd love to hear from you too is I think we don't often talk about how to review a film critically. I and obviously, for a lot of people out there, I'm not a professional film critic. I read what people say every once in a while, film critics, but it's not something that, I feel like I am capable of giving a professional opinion on a movie. You know what I mean? Like, I can give a personal opinion on a movie, but I can't really give a professional one. And so what are the elements, like how should, we as consumers look at film critics, and, what is the process for reviewing a film. Like, can you just give us the overview of what that looks like from a professional Catholic perspective of how you go about it?
Absolutely. There, first thing that you look for, and it helps to have a background in production, right? So I studied film at school. I wasn't very good behind the camera. I think I would have been a good director, barking out orders and whatnot, but I didn't like actually setting up the camera. So, but I know enough about the filmmaking process to be able to tell good production values when I see it, and you can. That's definitely one of the major points that you want to look for. But the number one overall, I would say, is what is the director trying to say here? What's the purpose that he or she has in making this film? And how well did they execute it? And that's one of the ways the production values comes into play. But there's a lot more at stake there as well, or there's a lot more in play. I like to bring my personal feelings into it. I don't think every critic likes to do that. My philosophy is that it shapes how you initially are moved by a film, and I don't think that you can take that away from the film experience. And I think readers want to see that because they know intuitively, whether they think through it or not, that your feelings are going to be different from theirs, are going to be different from anyone else who sees it. But they want to see good essay writing, and a good personal essay is something that brings up personal feelings, as long as you can defend them and as long as they're interesting, and they're based on something that the film itself brings out in you. And when I talk about the director's purpose, I always bring up, and again, this may or may not be shared by other critics, but I always bring up how worthy was that goal. There's a film that I just reviewed, an ESPN documentary called Long Gone Summer. And I was really looking forward to this because I grew up in that age, the home run race in the late 90s, Sammy Sosa, Mark McGwire, that's since been tainted by the steroids. I was a baseball player. I loved that summer. And so I was really looking forward to this. And I felt the director's vision, it was very clear. He set out to achieve a certain goal, set out to kind of mythology, to give that summer a mythology that it hasn't had because of the taint of steroids. And I thought that, okay, perhaps he achieved that goal, but how worthy was it? Was that really the way to treat that episode? To talk about steroids for 10 minutes, to sort of give that sort of broad brushstroke. You can't pretend that it didn't happen. And to me, that was the interesting meat of the film, and it was missed opportunity. So, yeah, a lot of writers will say all that matters is the director's goal. Does he achieve it? But I like to consider the worthiness of that goal too.
Yeah, I would think so too. I tend to agree with you on that. I would want to read that. I would want to read how and why, and then how worthy was the goal of of pursuing this topic. Like, we just pursue things because it makes us feel good, or are we pursuing things because it's going to make us better people? And so definitely, I think that would be something that I would want the perspective to read, to be able to see, okay, yeah, the director pursued a worthy goal here, and he achieved it or he didn't achieve it, but going after worthy things, going after things that are going to make us better people are so important. So yeah, I tend to side with you, but thank you for that, because I think I think your perspective is really good, and I think the consumers of media and of film. I mean, I can't tell you how many movies I've watched during this pandemic. I think everybody is sitting home, binge watching movies. Fortunately, as you alluded to, you're a baseball fan, so baseball is coming back here this week, which will maybe slow down the Netflix binging a little bit. But the amount of movies and media that we're consuming, I think we have to think about it intentionally. So, I mean, what a wonderful, thank you for kind of guiding us through that process. That's very neat.
Yeah, I agree. And Bill, the word consuming, I think that's good for us to think about, because that is exactly what movies, film, TV, media, what it is about, really. It is a product that is being sold. I know that might sound kind of black and white to hear it that way, but it is, they're products, aren't they? And we as consumers, we have a choice. Are we going to just watch that movie and just not really give it any more thought than that? As Bill said, that, hey, that was a good movie. Hey, that wasn't so great. Or are we going to think about it more critically? And as Catholics, I believe that is our duty, because we do want to search out the good, and we do want to search out, was the bottom line message of that movie, was it something that is going to make me a better person? I know, Michael, you talked to me a couple months ago, or we communicated about, you invited me to be a critic. And I am so blessed and grateful, because I'm an author with a couple Catholic publications, and I accepted. I mean, I'm going to get started on doing this. So just talking with you this morning helps me to think about, on my own angle, what will be my angle of writing. And I think for me, looking at it as a very critical thing to put a lot of thought into, and say, what good came from this movie in my own heart? And is it going to help to make society any better, or not really? And I think, Michael, you know what I'm talking about when I say that.
Absolutely. We're going to be proud to have you along, because of the experience you have. I mean, you know the industry so well. You're able to think critically about things like that, and we have, and you bring a very specific direction and philosophy, like that you just mentioned. I mean, you'll be joining good company in that, because a number of our writers really consider that as their main goal as Catholic writers. Whether or not a certain film makes you a better person, or makes you think about, sets your eyes on something greater or something higher, versus setting your eyes on something that's beneath them. And then why spend time on something that's not going to make you better? I mean, we all have to manage and ration, for lack of a better word, our time, our free time, the time that we want to be spending watching films, and that's why they turn to reviewers like us, because they want to know, is this going to be worth it? And about your point about consumerism, that is one of the better gifts that we're able to share, is that not just responding to something that's meant as, in very large part, for only consumption, to be able to produce something based on that, to turn that around and not just passively receive it, but also to produce with it the way that the creators, in a much smaller way than the creators of the film do, but to contribute to the discussion surrounding the film. And that, in turn, I hope, inspires others who have been satisfied with merely consuming to also contribute to the discussion. And whether it's in response to what I write, in argument against what I write, in support of what I write, or just get them thinking critically about it. If it inspires somebody to produce instead of just consuming, then that is one of the best goals that I could set.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, Michael, I think that's a really good point, because where you talk about inspiring somebody to produce, I think there are so many young people out there that want to, and even older people that want to produce content, and how do we produce that content, right? What are and so thinking about things critically, okay, what did I enjoy about this? What did I like about this? And okay, now I'm gonna develop this into my own production. I mean, this is what our ministry here at Patchwork Heart Ministry and Fiat Ministry Network. We do the TV side of things and live TV and live streaming, but there is still an art to it. I have my background and stuff in TV radio production, and so even on radio, there's an art to this. I've done voiceovers for animations. I've done interesting things. There's art to each and every podcast. There's art to each and every TV show or movie. And I think your point about inspiring people to produce good content, because I know that when I watch something, I watch it with a slightly different lens, like you do. Okay, and I've been to school for TV, and I can see whether I'm going to tune in just based on the production of this, and I'm going to stay tuned to it, just because the camera angles are switching in an odd way or something. It's like, okay, I can't even watch this, but yeah, I think beyond that, it's okay, what story am I telling? How am I telling that story? And if I'm going to tell that story properly, what does that look like for the consumer? So I agree, yeah, with the production aspect of things. That is also inspiring people to produce good content. I hope that each and every one of our programs here does that, and so I'm glad to see that you are doing the same thing with that. So that's awesome.
Thank you. And to be able to look at how to best do it, right? So I mean, and I don't have to say, but I think one of the problems with Christian productions is that there's not much subtlety, right? They hit you over the face with the message, and I think that in films, the way that we do, we appreciate the way that subtlety plays its role, to be able to craft a message that speaks to a large audience, but contains the themes that are there that Catholics appreciate, and at least I think that's the majority of our writers' philosophy. Although there are a lot of writers who single out Catholic productions, especially in Christian productions. I think that being able to craft that artwork is difficult, and when we point out things, hopefully it helps those who want to produce to say, oh, this is the way that it's most appreciated, and this is the way it's going to be able to speak to the largest audience and have the most impact.
Well, yeah, and I agree with you, because we live in a world that's comprised of a lot of different kinds of people, as we know, right? I mean, the word Catholic means universal. It's also our religion, right? You, Bill, and I, and a lot of our listeners here, not all of them, but probably a good number of them. And what we're communicating is the way that we live, right? So yes, we hope to communicate more than that and the Eucharistic way of life, but if nothing else, we're communicating good morality that makes a difference for the whole culture of people who are comprised of all different backgrounds, right? And that's very important, especially right now in what we're going through this pandemic, and many changes in our culture right at this exact moment in time. That's something that uplifts the spirit, right? We all need that. We all need something that's going to help us to wake up in the morning and feel good about life, right? So, and it's an appreciation for those different cultures and religions, I think, too, because we're all God's children, and I think when we look at it this way, as Catholic being universal, that's what you're doing. That's exactly what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. And one of the best films that I've been fortunate enough to review the last couple of months kind of talks about the difference in cultures and how disparate the world can be, and trying to bridge that gap in communication. I'm not sure if you'd seen The Farewell, about a young girl who goes over to visit her grandmother. Her grandmother just got cancer, and the family, the Eastern family in China, decides not to tell her that she's got terminal cancer, because they want her last months of life to be full of joy and not the worry and the difference in culture. I mean, there's a scene in there where one of the American family members says, this would be illegal in America. There's no way. They struggle with the morality of that. And the Eastern family says, no, this is our burden to shoulder for her. Just because you have a problem, a sort of guilt built in you from the American system of thinking, doesn't mean that we should foist that burden on her in the last months of her life. And to be able to see the subtleties between the different ways of thinking and to appreciate both, that's what it's all about. I mean, and you're right, we live surrounded by people who think differently from us as Catholics, and we have to engage in that culture. And there's great lessons to be learned by looking at a film like that doesn't bring up religion really at all, certainly not Catholicism, and to be able to see how they have to communicate with each other, how they struggle with the morality, and ultimately the decisions that they make.
That sounds like a good one. You said it's called The Farewell?
The Farewell. Yeah, I was in
Okay.
my top 10 last year. It's a great film, and I will say I watched it on a plane, and it was still able to move me, even surrounded by all those people, coughing around me.
Oh boy. No, the way that you articulated that, it's so true, because I think that's part of the challenge for all of us today, especially as Catholics, people of faith. We're in a culture right now where we are under a microscope for sure. I mean, I think we all agree on that one,
Mhm.
right? We're under a little bit of a microscope. So to have a place like the Catholic Film Critics, where we can evaluate films that are not necessarily branded as, hey, this is a Christian film or a Catholic film, but just to say, you know what, this is a film that was produced. Let's take a look at it and see, is God speaking at all through this film, even though it's not labeled as such, as Catholic or Christian? Is there some kind of a good moral message for our culture, which is so needed right now? Which
Yeah.
is so needed right now.
Well, I was down the beach a couple weeks ago. I know, and I was with you on vacation. Well, a little bit on vacation
Yeah,
with you
right,
at the same
right.
time. And we took our miraculously we took our vacations at the same time, which rarely happens in the media world.
kind of a
It's
miracle,
kind of
right?
those things. It's like, okay, well, I can't do the show, neither can I. But anyway, I was watching one evening with my family. I was watching the movie The Greatest Showman, and that movie to me speaks so many volumes about the gospel, and gospel values of a guy who took this P.T. Barnum, who takes a group of misfits, and people who are odd and weird, and makes them the greatest show on earth. And so for me, that just speaks volumes of the gospel. I remember doing a blog post, actually, where there wasn't a film review. It was more of a blog post on this, about how this works. How Christ, if Christ today was alive, would be doing this. He'd be going around picking the oddest, weirdest people and creating the greatest church on earth. Which he did. That's what he did 2,000 years ago. And so, in that movie, it just spoke volumes to me. And so, yeah, you're right. I mean, I think there are films out there that are not Catholic, that are not Christian, with that label on it. And I don't mean to use it as a bad label. I just mean to use it as, okay, this is not labeled as such. But it's okay to still watch it because there might be some values in this that you can point out rather obviously to your friends and to your followers and to your people that says, all right, hey, listen, this here is a positive, uplifting message. And are there a few things in there that we should question and that may not be exactly in line with church teaching? Absolutely. And we can address those, but it doesn't mean to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah, that's right. Throw the baby out with the bathwater. And when you think about evangelizing, we all know people who are not open at all to hearing some kind of catechetical message. As I said at the beginning, a Bishop Barron video or watching some kind of a film on Formed or something like that. But, they may be willing to watch a secular movie that has a good message, which could open a conversation, for those who like to evangelize, right? I mean, those kinds of things can open up a dialogue where maybe watching that Facebook video from a Catholic evangelist would not open up a conversation.
Exactly. I mean, I can rattle off tons of friends who would never sit down and watch Fireproof with me, right? But they would watch The Age of Innocence, because what are they? They're both films about the sanctity of marriage for the most part. One's by Christian group, and the other one is by Martin Scorsese, right? So obviously they have different messages. They have different things within them, but ultimately they come down to that, and that's what you're talking about. I mean, it's a secular film with a great message like that, that really dives into the difficulties of faithfulness and devotion and how hard marriage can be.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to leave this program without you're telling us a little bit more about some of the writers. I'm up on the website now, and I see you, John Anderson, and yourself, and Helena Burns, FSP, Lisa Hendy of Catholic Mom, Carl Kozlowski. I mean, these are just a few, but maybe you can tell us more. I know you wanted to touch on that topic, Michael. So, I didn't want 10 minutes left in us not to discuss.
Thanks. I'm surrounded by great people, right? So that's why I think it's there's a heavy Notre Dame contingent. I'm a Notre Dame grad myself. Vince Cuna is not just a Notre Dame grad, but he's also a Holy Cross priest. And he's heavily involved in production of film. He serves as consultant on spiritual matters and on production matters to a lot of Hollywood films. And his analyses of film are not your typical film reviews. He loves to parse adapted screenplays and compare the source material to what the film writer has done with it, and he does an outstanding job of highlighting that craft and the artwork that goes on there. Sophia Martinson, recently married, writes for Angelus. The Angelus is the Los Angeles Archdiocese newspaper. She's also a Notre Dame person, and Lisa Hendy as well. And Lisa, and you've written on CatholicMom.com. So
yes.
She is the founder. She writes there. She writes her own reviews. And I want to highlight what makes it the International Catholic Film Critics Association, because I do have some family abroad, and I'm able to write over there sometimes. So I kind of trump that up a little bit, but we do have 4 Australian writers who are outstanding and whose accolades are really too long to list. Peter Sheehan, I've had incredible discourses with him about the craft of reviewing films. Pauline Kyle is his Ebert for me. That's who really inspired him. And Peter is a former university president at Australian Catholic University. So he lives on the Gold Coast. He has a wealth of experience in academia and in film. And also in that Australian contingent, we have Colin Ryan, who is a young, up-and-coming all-star, and who served on film juries in Berlin and different places. Peter Malone is just over 80 years old. He's been writing for decades. He's got over 15,000 film reviews. He knows his stuff. He knows it inside and out. And he's also served as an assistant on film sets. And Richard Leonard is a Jesuit who's the director of that Australian office. And while his writing is a little bit more academic, he's published a number of books, and the best of which I would say is his book on Peter Weir, the Australian director, where he kind of looks at all the mysticism in the director's works over time, in Witness, in Gallipoli, one of the best Australian films ever made, and some of his later work. So, and Peter Weir is one of my favorite directors. So I really appreciate that work of art from Father Leonard.
That's so
Right.
awesome. What a diversity. What a diversity that you have. So it's really that's a very cool thing about it, Michael, is that you got different ages, different places, different all different walks of life, people coming from it, a religious background, a priest, a nun. That makes it wonderful, because I think you make it relevant for every reader to understand and grow in faith as they're watching films. So that is impressive and awesome.
It is very impressive. And I just thought I would mention this too. I'm looking at the website, and the Twitter handle is all one word. It's Catholic Film Critics. So if you have your phone there, make sure you follow them on Twitter. And on Instagram, let's see, the Instagram one, it's also Catholic Film Critics, all one word. So be sure to follow.
Yeah, follow, friend, like, all that good stuff.
All of that great stuff. Yeah.
We would love all that. Thank you.
Now, as we're coming
Pile 'em
into 5 minutes left, Michael, I wondered if you had any other final words, or maybe there's somebody listening who's interested in writing and maybe even doing this. So I didn't know if you had any words of advice or for those up and coming writers and film critics.
Oh, thanks for asking me that. I think I can't get away from tying your personal feelings about a film to the analysis, to the critical analysis of the film, from a sort of surgical standpoint. I don't think that the two can be separated, because it's such a personal medium. It is subjective. There are objective things about it, but yes, a Hollywood film will look better than a student production. Like that might be an objective thing, but there's so much that comes from what you bring to the film. And I'll say this about something like Little Women, the one that came out just last year. A lot of our writers, especially the Catholic film critics writers, they focused heavily on the feminism that the director Greta Gerwig put into it, and the way that she reinterpreted the original writing of it from Louisa May Alcott, and the way that she was able to go back and forth in the timeline of events, which I thought was really a genius stroke. But of course, though, with my personal feelings about the film, I was not able to separate, and I don't think it should be. I wasn't able to separate the what I thought was a bit of relegation of family in favor of career, and I'm not always in favor of that, whether it's a man or a woman. I think the reason that we go to work every day is to support our families and to come back to them with love. And at the end of that film, where she's clutching her book, where she's embracing her book, right? Where in Gillian Anderson's version in the 90s, she ends with the final embrace of her husband. And that's was a very specific thing that Greta Gerwig chose to do. And I thought it was, again, a very smart move, and it spoke to exactly what she wanted to say. And it was brilliant because it was visual, and film is a visual medium. I just, with my personal feelings, I think family comes first for me. It doesn't matter whether that's for a man or for a woman or for anyone. And I just didn't want to see love relegated. So that's just an example of how your personal feelings, something that you bring, that can mesh with your analysis of the objective craft of the filmmaking. And I can still appreciate what a director does. But again, my take on it's going to be a little bit different from someone else who may have different feelings than me. So I would just encourage young writers to embrace that and to let that come into their writing, and to let their essays come alive, and not just to say their feelings, but to back them up with the objective analysis. And that's where it really means something.
You said that so well. I remember the trailer for that movie, Little Women. I never saw the new one, but I remember watching it and thinking the message that I was seeing, even in their little commercial, was not based on what I thought the book seemed to be about. It did give off that message of sort of a feminism, and maybe, as you said, not necessarily putting family first, but putting your career and your quote dream ahead of that. So yeah, that you I think you evaluated that pretty well. So
thanks.
Thank you.
It's funny you mentioned the trailer, because I mentioned that in the review too, and I thought that the film itself was a lot more, it was deeper than the trailer made it seem.
Yeah, I don't think the trailer, honestly, at least for me, it didn't make me want to rush out and go see it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Other than the fact that it had some big name actors, I think, didn't it?
Oh yeah, big time. I mean,
other than that,
Saoirse is one of the best, right?
Mm-hmm.
And her supporting cast was incredible. But yeah, that's just another reason not to watch trailers ever. I try to go in completely blank. I want to be totally surprised.
Yeah, that's a good point. Good point.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, guys, thank you so much. This has been so much fun. We have to have you back, Michael, to talk more about about this stuff, because it's so relevant for our time, especially relevant during this pandemic, as people are consuming media and in droves. So please, everyone listening, head over to the website CatholicFilmCritics.com and check out all the amazing stuff that Michael has there. He's got a great website. So please check it out. And just can't thank you enough, Michael, for for being on with us today and sharing all about your mission, because it's quite awesome.
Oh, thank you, Bill.
It is.
Thank you,
Michael,
man, for having me. Thank you, and I'm always here to talk film with you whenever you want.
Sounds awesome, Michael.
Awesome.
You're welcome to. You're coming back. In fact, I have to mention, Bill, that he's going to be on Journeys in Faith, not till the fall, but I'm very excited about having Michael be a guest. Journeys in Faith is on Friday evenings at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. I don't have that date right in front of me. Michael, maybe you have it right there and you remember when you're going to be on Journeys in Faith. I'm looking it up as we speak. See if I have it in my calendar.
I got to get my personal assistant on that.
Yeah, I'm checking to see. I want to give them a date here if I can. I'm holding up our show here, aren't I?
It's okay, Ann.
Yeah, he's going to be on November 13th, 8:30 p.m. Eastern.
Oh, awesome.
Journeys in Faith on Fiat Ministry Network, Facebook Live.
Yeah, well, definitely tune in, everybody, to that. But thank you for tuning in today to Sowing Hope for both Ann DeSantis, I'm Bill Snyder. Keep beating to your Catholic heart and sowing hope into broken hearts. Thanks for listening to this episode of Sowing Hope on Patchwork Heart Radio. For more information about this podcast and our ministries, visit our websites, patchworkheart.org and andesantis.com. You can also follow and interact with us on Twitter at PWH Ministry or Andy Santis 2.
Patchwork Heart Ministry and Fiat Ministry Network present the Discover Your Mission series.
I can't even share with you how I was so wrote in my faith. And I was attending Mass, but I was not present. I was a good man, I was a good father, I was instilling the sacraments into my family. I was definitely not intentional. I was stuck wrote in my faith.
I did not want to become Catholic. I came into the church kicking and screaming. I even left for a period because I was like, I can't. All my plans that I had are gone now. So I tried to go back, only to come back later on because of the Eucharist.
But what kind of strength did he have? Jackie did not just have a strength of body or baseball skill. He had a strength inside of his spirit, a courageous meekness that empowered him to play the game.
My husband comes home from work and I tell him what is going on with me and he's like, oh, okay. And I'm like, no, I think this is like some sort of miracle, dude. And he's like, oh, of course, but I'll believe it when I see it. Honey, you've been trying to quit and you've been saying this and saying that. And his big line to me is, you shouldn't say things because I never follow through on them. And so this was week after week, month after month. He is looking at me like, this is a miracle. There is no way that you, on your own, could have done this.
In 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verses 16 through 21, St. Paul compares the sacrifice of the Christians to the sacrifice of Israel and then to the sacrifice of the pagans. Paul calls the chalice the blood of Christ and the bread as participation in the body of Christ, and then warns his listeners that you cannot partake of the table of the Lord and the table of demons at the same time. So in other words, you need to decide, what are you going to participate in? Are you going to participate in the historic Christian idea of the altar of sacrifice, which is in the Eucharist, or not?